Greetings, class. As a part of our writing unit, I want to focus today on a specific tool for analyzing literature, something I like to call the critical point. To look for a critical point is to look for a small part of the story, be it a novel, a short story, a movie, a comic book, or an episode of a TV show, that is pivotal to understanding or exploring any controversial elements of that story, be they plot or theme related. And when I say controversial, I mean to say questionable. As such, finding a critical point is a great strategy for analyzing or solving mysteries, testing a claim, or for delving into debatable dichotomies like, is this right or wrong, vengeance or justice, trustworthy or crazy. For example, if you've ever seen the film Shutter Island with Leonardo DiCaprio, you know that the big controversy of the film is whether the protagonist, played by DiCaprio, is completely sane in the middle of a conspiracy or is just as crazy as the other inhabitants of the island. Finding a critical point in this film, something all data would have to be reconciled with, like the scene in which we discover the truth about his past, would help us solve this mystery. An example of a critical point regarding theme and a testable claim would be a line at the end of Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight that becomes central to deciphering the theme of telling the truth versus hiding the truth. That not only permeates that film, but carries over into its sequel, The Dark Knight Rises. At the end of The Dark Knight, Batman, who is deciding to take the blame for the recent killings of Harvey Dent so that the city can hold on to the memory of Dent as a hero and effectively put away much of Gotham's criminal population, says to Gordon, "Sometimes the truth isn't good enough. Sometimes people deserve more. Sometimes people deserve to have their faith rewarded." And that seems very heroic considering the film's conclusion with a satisfied friend and heroic music. But then Dark Knight Rises happens, and 8 years after the events of The Dark Knight, the truth finally emerges, or is trudged up by the villain Bane, with dire consequences, effectively making us seriously question the validity of the prior statement. So in exploring the message of these films, we will continually return to this critical statement to test its validity. What elements of the plot support it and how? What characters acted on it or against it and why? What other instances regarding this theme throughout the film support or oppose it? Do you think it is true or false? What do the different characters think? Do their opinions change? And if so, why? These are just a few questions that one would use when exploring a text through a critical point. Now, more on what a critical point actually is. In writing, the critical point, which can be anything from a phrase to a sentence to a paragraph, is a segment of the story that can shape how you view the rest of the story from plot to theme. In other words, it is an anchor of sorts, something for you to always return to when interpreting a text, be that anchor a question, a claim, or an image presented by a character or the narrator. Now, let's explore the critical point by applying it to a famous short story by the great American author Edgar Allan Poe. Born at the beginning of the 19th century, Poe, for those of you who may be unfamiliar with his work, was one of the most prolific authors in American history, writing novels, short story, poetry, and even criticism. He is famous for his horror or macabre literature, and some even call him the first writer of the detective story. Doyle's Sherlock Holmes didn't arrive on the scene till later in the 19th century. The story we will be looking at here is called The Cask of Amontillado. If you have not already, I'd like you to pause this lecture and go read that story now. Go on now. You done? Okay, let's continue. So as you know, this is a story of revenge, supposedly, at least. Believing that Fortunato has wronged him, Montresso, the narrator, tempts Fortunato into the Montresor catacombs with the promise of a cask of Amontillado, and the intent to exact some form of revenge. They eventually come to the catacombs' end, where Montresor chains Fortunato to a wall and chains the entrance of the brick, leaving Fortunato to rot undisturbed for 50 years. Seems kind of straightforward, except it's not. The critical point in this story will help us explore both the trustworthiness of the narrator and question the very idea of revenge in tandem, which I think was Poe's intention. For me, the critical point of this story, that one phrase that changes how I look at the entire story, is Montresor's mentioning of his family crest. A huge human foot d'or and a field azure. The foot crushes a serpent rampant whose fangs are embedded in the heel. The motto accompanying the crest reads, "No one attacks me with impunity." Of all the crests and all the mottos, why would Poe choose this one? I think because it illustrates well the ambiguous nature of revenge, and forces readers to question the justness of Montresor's actions. Poe fails to identify the me of the motto as the snake or the foot, as both may be fatally injured. One can liken the image of the crest to the conundrum of the chicken and the egg. Did the snake bite the foot and merit the foot's wrath, or did the foot, perhaps unwittingly, step upon the viper, which struck its fangs into the foot in response? How you interpret this ambiguous image will affect how you interpret the story as a whole. If Fortunato is indeed an unwitting foot in this situation, this explains why nowhere does Montresor express the wrong for which he is seeking revenge. The evidence in the story, or lack thereof, I should say, is easily reconciled with this model, and that is the point of the critical point. Looking at a crucial component of the story in a way that best explains the rest of the story. So, real quickly, let's review. The critical point is a tool for literary analysis. It works best for solving mysteries or ambiguities, for exploring certain themes that pit one idea against another, or for testing a claim. The critical point is a small part of a story that, depending how you read it, or how well the rest of the story can be reconciled with it, can change how you read the entire text. Is Moby Dick, the white whale, an agent of God, fate, or just a whale? In the Odyssey, are the gods in control, or is Odysseus? Does Spider-Man live up to the greatest responsibilities that come with his greatest of powers? All questions that may be solved with the help for looking for a critical point.